We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
Disseminate propaganda to influence people's minds, and this is a major function of the CIA.
Hussein and his regime are concealing their efforts to produce more weapons of mass destruction.
Welcome back to Notify America. The Colorado Supreme Court just ruled to remove Donald Trump from the ballot, which tells you they are beyond desperate, folks, and we have new information on this. Also, we have Vivek Ramaswamy's response and the lack of response from other Republican candidates. It's times like these when you know who stands where, right? Who are your friends and who's your enemy? And believe me, there are still a number of elected members of Congress who you all put into office who support this. The same people who've been yelling about democracy and the sanctity of elections are deciding by judicial fiat who you're allowed to vote for and who you're not. Lots of new information coming out about this, but before we get started, press the like button and subscribe. It helps the channel out, and I appreciate your support. So in a pivotal decision, the Colorado Supreme Court, composed entirely, by the way, of justices appointed by Democratic governors, has removed Donald Trump from the 2024 presidential ballot. By a narrow 4-3 margin, the court blocked Trump from pursuing the presidency, citing his involvement in the January 6th Capitol riot. The ruling hinged on the post-Civil War era 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which prohibits individuals involved in insurrection from holding public office. In its verdict, the Democrat-controlled court asserted that Trump had engaged in insurrection by fueling his supporters with baseless claims of election fraud and directing them to the Capitol. So without Trump ever being convicted of January 6th or any of the other crap that they've thrown at him, the Colorado Supreme Court does this: removes him from the ballot over insurrection. Again, these people don't seem to understand that their actions have consequences. The consequences being that people lose trust in the justice system. How can you remove him from the ballot for insurrection when he hasn't been convicted of insurrection? Listen to how the corporate media is portraying this, by the way. Watch this.
With major breaking news, a bombshell ruling from the Colorado Supreme Court in just the last hour states that Donald Trump is disqualified from holding the office of president.
Joy, first of all, thank you for having me on. I know it's very short notice, and we're all just trying to absorb this. Listen, I think in the broad strokes, in terms of our democracy, there are very few magic wands. there are very few sort of magic spells that you cast that make a complex and difficult problem go away.
I think we're going to go through a year of this has never happened before in this presidential election, so be prepared to keep stating that.
It truly is stunning news, and I expect this is a 5-alarm fire.
So you don't believe Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas should recuse himself given his wife's reported efforts to overturn the election results? You don't?
The 14th Amendment provides that insurrectionists may not hold office.
Now, we all know what happened at the Capitol on J6. It was a rally that turned into a protest that got out of control and evolved into a riot. None of the protesters were arrested with firearms, not one person. It's ludicrous to claim it was a planned insurrection to overthrow the government, which means they're getting desperate, folks. They've had this in their back pocket, waiting to pull it out only if they needed to. And well, have you seen the most recent polling? Trump is trouncing Biden right now. In the last few weeks, his lead has widened considerably. Rasmussen has him up 10 points right now, but even when you take the averages, the real numbers, not the right-wing polls, not the MAGA polls, but Real Clear Politics average of all polls, he's up with a 5-point spread. You can see it here. This is what they are worried about. And these polls, most of them at least, are slanted for Democrats. They always oversample left-leaning voters. It's a suppression technique. In response to this, the Trump campaign released this statement saying, "We have full confidence that the U.S. Supreme Court will quickly rule in our favor and finally put an end to these un-American lawsuits." Now, shortly after the news broke, statements began to flow out from other candidates and different politicians. Here's RFK Jr.'s response. Every American should be troubled by the Colorado Supreme Court's decision to remove President Trump from the ballot. If Trump is kept out of office through judicial fiat rather than being defeated in a fair election, his supporters will never accept the result. This country will become ungovernable. Vivek Ramaswamy released this statement. Watch.
They have just tried to bar President Trump from the Colorado ballot using an unconstitutional maneuver that is a bastardization of the 14th Amendment to our U.S. Constitution. This was a provision, Section 3, that was designed to bar Confederate members, people who switched to the Confederacy, from actually being able to serve. That's very different than what's at issue here, to say the least. This is a hollowed out husk of what the country was built on. The basic principle that we, the people, select our leadership, not the unelected elite class in the back of palace halls. That's old world Europe, not the United States. That's why I'm making a pledge today that I will withdraw, I pledge to withdraw from the Colorado GOP primary ballot unless and until Trump's name is restored. And I demand that Ron DeSantis and Chris Christie and Nikki Haley do the same thing, or else these Republicans are simply complicit in this unconstitutional attack on the way we conduct our constitutional republic. I refuse to be complicit in that. I think what they're doing is wrong. And I think it's up to Republicans to step up and stand up with a spine for our country's future. That's really what's at stake. Whether we, the people, actually have a say in deciding who leads this country. Yes, it would be easier for other Republicans like me who are running in this race to say, hey, if Trump is sidelined, there's our opportunity. No doubt other candidates are probably privately celebrating with their corporate sponsors. That's not the right thing to do. I think the most useful thing that every GOP candidate can do right now is to join me in that pledge. I'll say that I will withdraw from that Colorado GOP primary ballot until Trump's name is restored. This belongs to the people, not to the unelected Democratic cabal of judges in Colorado or any other state. And I demand that Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley and Chris Christie do the same thing, or else they're complicit in what this security state is trying to do to shut down Trump. I stand by that, and I expect them to do the right thing.
Unsurprisingly, the other GOP candidates didn't take him up on that. Have you ever wondered, by the way, why Ron DeSantis is still in the race, why any of them really are challenging Trump when they know they have no chance of beating him? Because they've been told that Trump won't make it to Election Day. Something will take him off the ballot. But there's a silver lining to all this. It shows you where the GOP stands. It shows you where all of these congresspeople and senators really stand. For example, Congressman Dan Crenshaw, a Republican, a creature of the Uni Party, even though a lot of people don't realize it, he's an establishment. He's as establishment as you can get. Take a look at his Twitter account last night. He retweeted this, the Hills article about Vivek pledging to withdraw from the Colorado ballot amid Trump removal. He writes, maybe you should just withdraw from all the other states. Now, on a parallel track, over the last year, there have been constant political attacks against Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. The media has been ramping up the hit pieces for months, trying to tie him to Trump in any way that they can. Well, now we know why. Last night, the media began their pressure campaign calling for him to recuse himself from this case, saying it would be a conflict of interest due to his wife being a Trump supporter.
So you don't believe Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas should recuse himself given his wife's reported efforts to overturn the election results? You don't?
Which is ridiculous. Clarence Thomas is fine, and he shouldn't listen to any of this nonsense. If he recuses himself from this one case, you know they're going to call for it on every other case that they don't like. All right, that wraps up this episode. Press the like button, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.